Hello, Booktube. New hair, new shelves I'm working on. It's currently an absolute tip in my room. I had a bit of a desire to mix things up a bit because why not, to be honest? And so I moved all my classics out from that shelf. It took like 2 seconds, but I moved them to where the non-fiction station used to be, and then I put all of my Australian books here, and it's chaotic. It's not done yet, so we're still working on it. And below, in the last two shelves now, are all my Prime Minister books. But anyway, so I'm just telling you so you're not shocked by this change because I still haven't gotten over it yet. But JJ is back at it with the incredible discussion videos. A couple weeks ago it was tell me why I'm wrong about certain books and all that. And now she has a new one called Can You Appreciate Books You Don't Like? Something that lives absolutely rent free in my mind. There's some authors, some books who I'm going to talk about that completely fit some of these prompts she talks about. And yeah, let's start. So she started talking off, but started talking with books you keep going back to even if they're not faves or even well liked. And I do that a lot, to be honest, especially when it's like an author who I know that I should like, or sometimes I'm just so curious about an author's oeuvre that I read a book and it's like, oh my god, I did not like that, but I'm going to keep marching through everything they ever wrote just to make sure and all that. A great example of that for me is Patrick White. I have read every single word written by that man, and the only thing I've ever liked from Patrick White is the David Marr big biography of him. I think you can see if I move my head. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere, but like the closest thing I come to liking Patrick White's actual writing is what the Tree of Man. That's really I don't like Voss. I don't like Riders of the Chariot. I don't like My Auntie Story and all that stuff. His short stories are fine, I guess, but he's an author I keep going back to because I feel like I'm missing out, to be honest. But I've made my peace with White, to be honest. Another author who's like not a favorite or well liked that I still keep going back to is actually Wilkie Collins. He wrote The Moonstone and The Woman in White, very Victorian sensation novels and all that. And I don't really like him, to be honest. I don't like his plotting. It's very uneven. Very, people like the unpredictability of it. I think it's kind of just tossed together. I don't think he has the best characters ever, but he has weirdly great representation in his novels when it comes to disabilities and all that. But I go back to him every Victober, and I've read majority of his most famous novels. I've probably read like seven of his novels ish. But I still go back to him, even though I don't really like him. But I can enjoy them in the moment as being so outlandishly over the top, but in a way that only a Victorian author could be. So I do, that is kind of a example of that. And then there's some authors who I read the first time who weren't particular favorites, or I didn't like them as much, or I kind of just thought they're fine and moved on, only to come back and my feelings have changed, to be honest. And a great example of that recently is Jackie Collins. I read, what did I read from her? I read The Stud and Hollywood Wives as a teen and thought they were fun. I put them down. I never picked her up again until this year, where I'm completely addicted to her novels. I'm making my way through the Hollywood Wives series. I've read the Lucky books this year. I read all of her standalones up to the 80s, and I want to say I can finish her entire, her complete novels by the end of the year, which isn't a chore at all, to be honest. But yeah, she's a weird example of someone who I appreciate more as I got older, which is I don't think that's really normal for Jackie Collins. But another example where I've gone back to, and I definitely don't like it as much, is Sherlock Holmes. I've talked about this before, but yeah, I went back to Sherlock as I liked him as a teen, but I went back to him in my early 20s, and I was like, wow, they're kind of the same. Especially once Conan Doyle gives up on Sherlock, it kind of shows a bit. And then there's some authors that I want to see how bad can they go really in terms of, wow, I did not like their work, but I want to keep going to see, what's the, level of quality over here. And I have some authors. Um, this is not the best example, but Henry James. I like short Henry James, at the start of his career, the Aspirin Papers and all that, when he was, a really good, consistent writer. But my God, the Golden Bowl lives rent free in my head. I recently found it at an op shop and I brought a paperback, even though I have it as an ebook. And I'm tempted to go back to it because I have no clue what Henry James was thinking when he wrote that novel, let alone some of his, other later novels. But he's an example of like, I keep going back to, especially his later period stuff, where I'm like, what's going on here? It's kind of like the later Hardy novels, like The Well Beloved or Jude the Obscure or Tess of the D'Urbervilles. So I'm like, what happened? Literally. It could also fit in D.H. Lawrence into this. He's one of my least favorite authors ever. Like literally, I'm not going to talk about Kangaroo when it comes to Oz books because he was not an Australian writer. But I've read a good chunk of D.H. Lawrence. I've done his fiction, his non-fiction, travel, like everything. At least not everything. A good representative of D.H. Lawrence. I've done a biography of him. I've done his letters, and he just does absolutely nothing for me. I kind of don't get why he's in the canon. I know that's very controversial, but I look around and I think of so many other authors who were around that time. Like I would rather read any of them, like Edith Wharton or Woolf or I don't know, throw a dart. Like literally, the only other one you could think of is like Patrick White, who was very much like we have G.H. Lawrence at home. So he's another one. Nietzsche too. I don't get people who like Nietzsche. He writes like he is having a mental breakdown, each page, and I just can't do it. Same with Aquinas. I just find him too preachy, but I've read a good chunk of him just to see, the level of consistency, even though they're not faves, definitely, or I don't really like them that much. Again, Henry James has a bit of an exception. But then the other prompt is, do you want to reread a book you dislike over one you enjoyed? And that is so true. I do that all the time. I, honest to God, go back to books that I have very complicated feelings on, or I didn't like more than I ever go back to favorites. Like, there's a handful of books that I do, every year. Because I kind of like the idea. Like, I do Picnic at Hanging Rock every year. I should do Moby Dick every year, to be honest. I can't remember what else I do, to be honest. I want to go back to, Edith. There's so weird authors where they're my favorites, but I never go back to them, and I need to change that. Like I'm looking Mary Doyle Russell, or Tessa Dare, or again Edith Wharton, Kafka, William Tyndale, authors that I genuinely love, but I just never go back to them because something gets in the way. But I definitely do go back to books I have, more complicated feelings of, because taste can change over time, and sometimes books click with you more after you've read a bit, more, and it just kind of changes over time, and that's a really exciting thing, to be honest. There's some authors where I'm wanting to see that happens, like Emily St. John Mandel. I loved her as a teen, and I don't know how she would hold up now, especially her earlier novels. But I will be reading, was it Exit Party, I think, when it's released. I will be doing that. In terms of some other ones, that's really all I can think of right now. But yeah, I definitely relate to that, and I kind of feel like I need to shift it back because I just read a lot of mediocre books, to be honest, more than I read ones I kind of like. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about this lovely discussion about appreciating books that you kind of don't like. And I think it's possible, but I also think it's two different things. Like, obviously, enjoying them and thinking about them critically are two, different things you can do and balance them. And it's a very interesting conversation. But I hope you join in. So do a response video. It's very fun. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching BookTube, and I will see you next time.